We are live once again. Hello, it's a Wednesday night, and it's a fourth Wednesday of the month, which means it's a John Grayson night. Although the last few months have been wackadoo with the holidays and so forth, so we haven't had a chance to do our normal. John, good to be with you once again. It's been a while. How are you?
Always great to be with you, Pat. So I am good. We're out here in Cali, and I am lucky that I'm safe.
Yes. There's about 4 people in the world that could call me Pat and get away with it. I'll allow you to be one of them. No one else is ever allowed to call me that, just so you know. But you can if you want. That's okay. All right, everyone. Wednesday night webinar time brought to you by NOCD. NOCD, an online platform for the treatment of OCD and related conditions. If you're looking for help for OCD or related disorders, check us out at nocd.com. That's NOCD.com. We work in the UK, Australia, Canada, and the United States, and we take more and more insurances all the time here in the US. John, tell me a little about you and what you do.
Well, I've been treating OCD only since 1978, so I'm a little new to it, and
should really work on that
practice. I know. Yeah, I private practice and love working with OCD, and we run a free support group for anybody who suffers from OCD. It is limited to people in the local Los Angeles area, but outside of that, it's just a service we provide. But they don't have to be a client of mine to do it.
Awesome. Well, shall we begin?
We could. I see one that I love, but I don't know if you want to jump to it.
If you want to jump, we'll jump back. If there was something you wanted to make sure we get to, though, go right ahead. What time is it at?
It's at 4:54.
So 6:54. Okay.
And Zach Sullivan was concerned. I might be looked at a later one, that does accepting uncertainty means he doesn't really ever get to.
There we go.
Does he never really get to believe anything?
Yeah. What if accepting uncertainty is me avoiding out of fear? Or what if not engaging in an act I know is wrong and terrible is my way to reassure myself that I'm not that terrible thing? That's the reassurance seek. Anytime I try to use my tools, I'm running into this.
Yeah. The interesting about, uncertainty is like, can I, it's almost like, can I believe something and be uncertain?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't like I feel good. Mindfulness, right, is I'm doing two things at once. Something awful's going on, and I do feel all that awful stuff. And at the same time, I can enjoy something, which I know sounds strange, but it's like part of living. And so I think I can have a belief and be comfortable in the belief and not know if it's real. I happen to, in a way that might seem crazy, but no one's ever accused me of sanity. I happen to believe in God. Now, if somebody says, John, you might be, I think you're making that up. And my answer is, you're right. I don't have to know for sure. I'm perfectly willing to change that belief if you can prove me wrong. Good luck. So I'm going to do that. And I'm comfortable with that, even knowing it might be wrong. And, I would say about atheism, I would say, yeah, you might be right, but you can't prove that one either, which is fine. I don't need to prove it one way or the other. So there are things. I feel like I love my wife. It's not a psycho relationship, other than if anybody's wondering how she could put up with me. But at least from my end, it's not psycho. And, so it's going well. It's only been going on for a little more than 50 years. Maybe, in some way I don't actually love her or something. It's like, I don't know, I'll wait till it becomes obvious. Right now, I enjoy it. I don't question it. Do I know for sure it's true? I'm betting on it, but do I know? I don't have to. So I think I can simultaneously have beliefs. I think in a way I live with what I guess the probabilities are. I don't walk in the middle of the freeway. I'm thinking the probability of getting hit by a car are higher. I'm aware the sidewalk is safer, not safe. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, to say that I have uncertainty is always, I think, to admit the worst might happen. Because if I don't want to get hit by a car, I can't walk even on sidewalks. but
Maybe
I
not
take the
even in
risk.
your own home, because sometimes people go off the road and hit people's houses, right?
That's true. Though in my condo, being on the third floor, I'm going to be impressed.
Yeah, well, yeah, I
Yeah,
would be
I think
impressed.
I'm going to have to worry about small aircraft, but I don't. I'm pretty sure cars. I'm pretty sure cars. I'm pretty sure I'm safe.
I'm just trying to think, imagine someone's coming to tow someone and they've just put the ramp down on the flatbed and a car comes whizzing down the street
And
and doesn't,
speeding and
and
launches.
boom,
Yeah,
and launches
right.
into the third floor of the building, right? Could happen.
Exactly. So
Could happen. Mhm.
but I'm willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
We still are in the bedroom by the window.
Yeah. There you go. And I think that's probably the big thing. One of the things that I always say about OCD is it says, I'll accept the risk in 99.99999% of life. I would just like this one to be 100% guaranteed certain.
Yeah, I know. And sometimes people say that, variations of that, and it's always, yeah, as near as I know, that's not likely.
Right. And I get it. It sucks, right? I mean, I think we'd all love to have some certainty, right? Wouldn't it be great just to have it? But I've also noticed that the certainty is only around negative things. I mean, no one's begging me for certainty about the lotto numbers this month,
That's true.
or
And there are times I point that out to a client when they're all negative. I said, this works both ways. It could
yeah,
be good.
mhm,
It's like oh, like I might die from this or whatever. It's like it could actually be really good. So, I really would endeavor to have you live the entire range of uncertainty.
yeah, yeah. But nobody does that, do they? I just don't see it going that way.
Not frequently.
Uh, let's see. Madeline says, when is something reassurance and when is it acceptance during an exposure? Interesting.
I
Uh,
feel like in a way we answered it because
I think so. Yeah.
I think acceptance says the worst thing might happen.
Yep.
I won't be happy about it, but I will try to make the best of my second best life. For
Yep.
one reason, I have no choice. I think it's reassurance when it makes you feel like it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm safe. It's like somebody saying, I have OCD, so it means that this isn't a problem. It's like, oh no, you have OCD. That's true. It doesn't mean that's, it's like I'm afraid of cancer. Well, you might have an OCD problem. It doesn't mean you don't have cancer.
Yeah.
And it goes for everything with varying probabilities.
Yeah. The one thing Madeline says here says, if the worst is to happen, then that's okay, is a thought that she says. Now, they reduce her anxiety. Is that good or a bad thing? Madeline, I personally, John may disagree with me, but I don't do that's okay. I can handle it, because I try not to put a valence on it, if it's okay or not okay, if it's good or bad, if it's right or wrong. I want to be able to look at anything and just be able to go, if that's the case, I'm going to have to figure out a way to handle it, so that we aren't debating, is this doing good or bad, or reducing my anxiety, or making it worse, or something of that nature. That's where I go. But John, I don't know what your thought on is.
Very close. You're actually more positive than me.
Okay.
No, what I'll say is I hope to cope.
Okay. Great.
It's like I mean, what if I don't cope? I don't know, but that's my plan. It might, and again, saying it's okay. Like I think there are things I would cope with that are awful, and they might be a long period of difficulty learning to cope with something. So I hope my life is eventually going to be one that I'm enjoying living, and that's what the process is of learning to cope with whatever nightmare it is. But I can come up with a lot of possible crap I could put up with that I would hope to cope with. I don't know if I'd say it's okay.
Yeah.
Like like the California fires. I think I could cope with my house burning down,
Yeah.
but and so I don't expect life to be ruined forever. So yeah, I expect to have a good life later, but I think right now it wouldn't be like okay.
Yeah. Right. Mhm. Kelly says, I'm doing imaginal and flooding exposures. I'm confused on how much I should spend time picturing the scenarios during the exposure because during the rest of my day, I'm supposed to not engage with the thoughts.
I wonder who said that. Kelly,
I know where you're going, so take it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like to do. I mean, I do. I don't know. There are 2 or 3 points here. One
Yeah.
is I like to record these because, and in the recordings, I like to do 3 things. I always like to have the exposure part. You know, if I do, if I don't do this ritual, X might happen. And I always say might happen because, if I say might, that's what you're afraid of. If I say it will happen, you might go like, nah, it's not going to really happen. So
Right.
it might happen.
Yep.
Then we go into all the awful things about X.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also talk about how would I realistically try to cope. And I don't think that's reassurance because I said, um, again, coping with my house burning down, coping with the death of a loved one. It's not like, oh, that's okay. It's like that'll be painful. And I have to kind of be realistic about the difficulty. And then a critical thing that I always want to be part of my exposure is why would I take this risk? Why would I? Because, I think too often therapists just go like, oh, you'll just do this. And it's like, as most of you know out there, it feels like a horribly overwhelming risk to take. It's like, why am I going to do this? And I think the answers fall into 3 categories. One, you don't have a choice because probably your rituals don't work and the worst thing can happen anyway. Or if you have a ritual, Patrick and I can find ways that you're not doing it well enough, so you need to act crazier.
Mm-hmm.
2, what are you personally losing to OCD? And I would always wish you wouldn't just say I lose time or I lose this. I would want you to remember the awful, painful things that have occurred from OCD because they're important. And 3, even though it's not my intention, how am I basically making the lives of my loved ones miserable? OCD is not letting you be who you want to be. So why would I take those risks? And so I actually put all of that in the exposure because not only do we want you to be confronting it, I think it's very important to remember why I'm doing this, and how I'm trying to think. And then the last part, we want it recorded. I would have you play it as much as you can during the day, sometimes with active listening, sometimes with passive. That is, it's on in the background, you're doing other stuff. And even though you're not hearing directly, because the point of the exposure on tape is not, do you know what's on the tape? You're going to know after an hour. But when we're caught off guard, we tend to slip into our old thinking. And so OCD, basically doesn't rest. So I don't want treatment arrest. So yes, I wouldn't say don't, not engage in the thoughts. I want these other thoughts there all day. And we want you to be doing all the other stuff of life.
Yes.
I would even have you, take out one headphone, listen to it quietly. You won't quite hear the words, but you'll be used to it while you're watching TV. If it's with family, they know. Obviously, some places you can't wear, but in the car, I would have it going all the time so that when you get whatever you practice most is most likely to do. So we're hoping if you get caught off guard and don't, rather than just flipping into OC and you kind of forget everything, it's like, oh yeah, all that stuff on my tape. All right, I've got to do that. So anyway, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes people will say to us, wait, you want me to go and do something while this is going? Isn't that distraction? Well, and I think it's very important to point out to people there's a difference between living your life and distraction. Living your life means this thing's going on in my head and I'm still going to go do all the things that I need to do for the day. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to interact with people. Distraction is this is happening in my head. I'm going to come up with something right now to focus on so that I pay no attention to that and just really engage in that thing so I don't have to engage in the other thing.
And that is also a reason for listening to the tape.
Exactly.
Because the tape makes it impossible to forget that.
Yes.
So I don't mind if somebody forgets, but sometimes it becomes a goal. And sometimes I make a tape that's maybe just has a single word. Like, if I have the hyper awareness, I'm focusing on breathing. It'll say breath, and I'll wait 30 seconds, breath again. I'll wait a minute. And so I kind of have a random occurrence of the word breath. Silence is in between. And it's just like, so they're going along and it's like they hear that as a reminder of like, that's right, I'm functioning with this, not like getting rid of it. Because that wish to get rid of it is just torture.
Correct. Yeah. And of course, the more you hope a thought or an image or an urge goes away, guess what? It sticks around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty guaranteed. How can I stop neutralizing a distressing image or thought? Neutralizing is so ingrained in my thoughts, but I know that it's sabotaging my treatment. How can I stop it?
I know what you're going to say, I think.
Okay.
Do you want to say it?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I always say is that anytime that you've neutralized something, undo the neutralization after you've neutralized. That's where I go with everybody all the time.
Right. And I think right, there should be some negative wrong thought that they can just be saying.
Correct. Yeah. So if I have a thought about, my parents dying tonight, and then I say, but no, I love them, then I follow that up with, oh, or maybe not. Right. And just allow for that.
Or my parents might die, I hate them.
Yeah.
Whatever it is I'm saying, it's like, let's have you recite the scary thing and say the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Playing on a tape repeatedly is kind of cool because, if it's going 24/7, that would put you in a situation where you really couldn't, neutralize at that rate.
Right. And that is the joy of the loop tape, isn't it? Just there comes a point where
it's cute. You betray your age because now we're doing MP3s that are on infinite repeat. Loop tape. If you got a 20-year-old patient here, they're going like, well, I kind of get the idea what it is, but I have no idea what you're really talking about.
For those of you not old enough, it was a cassette that actually looped back on itself, and once you hit play, would just play infinitely, and they were fascinating, and we had to have a timer with us when we recorded them because if you went too long, it would start recording over what you'd already recorded.
Right.
So
right. Yeah,
if
you couldn't be flexible in your time. Here's a 1 or 5 or 10-minute tape.
Yeah. We had a couple of 30-second tapes. So it's like, at 28 seconds, you better be done because there's always that little plus or minus second on how long the tape was. You got to make sure you didn't do it. Oh, yeah. Ellie says, last time you told me compulsions were a choice, but are they our fault? Okay.
I think Ellie is being cruel.
Yeah, to herself.
I mean, I mean, because when you ask if it's your fault, I feel like it's, you're either saying it in a kind of moral way or a self-deprecating way. It's an incredibly powerful urge, and you do not choose to have that urge. That's real. It is a choice whether you give in or fight it, but it's not like an easy choice like la-di-da, as you've already experienced. It's really, it feels overwhelming.
Or the strawberry. I don't know. Yeah, it's not that choice.
Yeah. But it's a big choice. And I think if you're going to have self-compassion, it doesn't mean like, well, I gave in, so it's okay. But this doesn't make the opposite true. I gave in. I'm an asshole. That's terrible. I'm never getting better. I think self-compassion is like, yeah, this wasn't the best for me. What, are the things I can do to work at doing this more completely? Because ultimately that's going to help me more. She says something about sometimes they're automatic, and that can be true. And it depends what they are, what we do. I had somebody with, and this was a little easier, behavioral compulsions. He had contamination, and he literally would sometimes like wash his hands at the sink without realizing it.
Yeah.
You will like what I'm about to come up with, Patrick, because what we did, it was the faucet. What we did is we taped a bunch of toothpicks facing up. So when he grabbed it, oh shit! Yeah. And that got rid of the accidental one. So if they're mental, I think I think it's can we find ways? It's not like the trick is always different with everybody. I would argue that beating yourself up is somewhere between another compulsion, or it reflects a problem that may not interfere with life as much, but is worse than your OCD. And that is, maybe you have really crappy self-esteem. And the reason I say it's worse than OCD is you consider OCD and you think that's like a problem that makes no sense. But people with bad self-esteem, you actually believe all this horrible stuff. Patrick and I just think, bad self-esteem means you have a messed up way of looking at yourself, as opposed to your view, you're a defective human being, and all the stuff you're doing is just further proof of how awful you are. Our treatment is let's help you look at yourself more accurately, as opposed we're going to turn you into a good human being. So another kind of exposure for you is to kind of realistically say, okay, this is interfering with my progress getting better. It doesn't make me a bad person or any of that. It's like I'm a person who might keep having OCD. That doesn't feel good. But I would really argue against beating yourself up. It's like you're trying to learn, like, uh, I don't have to behave ideally in anything to be worthwhile. There are consequences to my behavior. That doesn't mean I am bad. Anyway, I know Kimberly Quinlan's book on self-compassion would be the thing I might recommend. I really love Kimberly's book.
Other than all the exclamation points, of course.
Other than the exclamation points. But she admits it. She admits there are too many exclamation points.
Valentina says, I'll be moving next month and I get very upset thinking that my belongings will probably touch the ground or dirty hallway floors in the process. How should I deal with future OCD urges to avoid the bags which touch the floors? Should I intentionally mix them with the clean ones? I mean, it sounds like a great ERP to me to do something.
I mean, Patrick and I, the answer we have is yes.
Yes, that sounds great.
And actually, there is one other thing she can do preemptively.
Yeah.
Start having everything touch the dirty hallway floors now. Go out,
right.
touch the dirty hallway floor, and touch everything you own.
Yep.
Food,
maybe lay in the floor
belongings.
for a little while, just take it.
Yeah. So that you are forever covered with that. So that would be our favorite suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely. But you got it right. Mixing things up, doing that kind of stuff. That's exactly what we want to see happen, right?
She's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Do it. Jack says, I struggle a lot with understanding and explaining my thoughts. I feel like I can't define what is going through my head or even say it out loud. All I know is there's an intense urge to fix myself. There's also an intense anxiety that wants to go away. And then there's an urge to figure things out. When I try to figure it out, I don't know what I need to figure it out, and I go in circles. What's going on? Sounds like a lot of existential OCD things to me. I don't know what you think about, John, but
I think there are two problems.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really hard for people, with intense anxiety. The goal that we try to sell you on is we're not trying to get rid of it. We're trying to help you cope with it.
Right.
And that is work. There's no way I'm going to say anything today that's going to make it like, oh, now I can cope with it. Correct. And because the one thing that we know with high probability, if you want it to go away, you're going to make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
So we can make it less worse. And, I just talk about uncertainty sometimes. So my exposure to figuring out is like, I'm going to hope that this urge to figure things out is not important. So I'm going to do things and not know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the goal. It's easier. Everything's easier said than done.
Yeah. I wonder too about, first of all, if OCD has set a goal for you, Jack, as I'm reading this, which is I need to really be able to define what's going through my head. I don't know anybody who's satisfied OCD enough on any goal that OCD has ever set. I mean, if you think about, I've said this before, if OCD is the doubting disorder and it demands a certain answer, it can't accept the certain answer because it's the doubting disorder and it doubts every answer that you give it. So therefore, you'll never give it what it wants, even though it's going to keep telling you that it wants it and that you need to give it to it. So if you're searching in your thoughts for really being able to define what is going on in your head, John and I will tell you that's not the goal of treatment, right? John and I will never say, you know what, that's a great idea. Well, here's what we're going to look for in treatment. We're going to help you truly 100% be able to define what's going on in your head. That will not be our goal whatsoever.
We'd have to know that, first of all, so we can't do that.
Right. And I don't know why the shit that goes through my head sometimes goes through my head, much less anything else, right? So yeah, that's not what we're going to try to do. And I've coined a phrase because you say when you try to figure it out, I love to say to people, just keep in mind that this is unfigure outable, right? There, I don't know if that's really a word or not, but I'm using it. That again, you can't figure out something enough to be satisfying to OCD, because if you could, then there would be enough research for you to finally do, and then OCD would say, "Hey, thanks, I'm good now." And John, 1978. So you know, a long time you've been treating OCD. Have you ever once met somebody who's done enough research to where their OCD said, "Thanks, I'm out of here"?
You know, maybe they're there, but I didn't meet them yet.
Okay, so I'll go with no, you haven't. So there we go. Yeah, and that's just the hard. And I think no matter what question John and I get in our careers of, you know, together, you're looking at 75 years of OCD treating experience here between the two of us, right? And it all comes down to people want to say to us, but is there a way that I can get some certainty in this? Can't I just have it for this thing? And we're always going to tell you what we believe is the liberating, but potentially probably disappointing answer to you. No.
Right.
So
You might get
let's
high
go.
probability, but that's not certainty.
Right. But I love where that leads into Zach's question, because it says, does truly accepting uncertainty mean never
Oh,
being
that's the
able
one
to
I
have?
answered in the beginning.
Oh, is that the one? That is the one. Okay,
Yeah,
good. So we've come back to it.
yeah,
Okay. All right,
yeah,
we've come
yeah.
back to it. Yeah. Yeah. And I love that kind of we're back there again, right?
Yeah.
I have, I don't know about you, John, but when I go drive, I have what I feel is certainty that I'm a good driver. But that doesn't mean that I have 100% guarantee that I won't be into an accident.
Or that you
So,
won't sneeze.
yeah, right. And go like this with the wheel and hit the garbage can next door or something like that. Exactly. So I believe I can feel certain about things without having a guarantee.
Yeah. And I also can feel that the certainty I feel, it can feel enjoyable, but it doesn't mean it's true. Like
Correct.
I can allow myself to enjoy it, but it's like, do I really know? No.
Hmm.
I'm an okay driver. For real. I would have to say, like, you know, I'm on the good side, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe you should drive.
I'll drive. I love driving. I'm a fan of driving. More of a night driver personally than a day driver. Really like driving at night, but you know, we all have our thing. There are a few people in our field, I'll tell you off camera, never drive with them. One in particular, I'll let you know who that is later. Eric says, is it okay that during OCD anxiety disorder, our brain, or is it okay to say that during OCD anxiety disorder, our brain is in emergency state, and that's why it keeps sending us so many anxious thoughts, because it doesn't know there is no real threat. Oh, I like
And,
that.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you were so close, Eric.
Yeah.
You were so close. You know, I was always, you know, it's okay to say that my brain's in emergency state, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's sending me anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
And it might be a false alarm.
Maybe. Mm-hmm.
You want it to be a false. You want proof. In a way, we're pretty boring once you realize it's like
Mm-hmm.
it might be a false alarm. It might even probably be a false alarm. But you know, I have somebody who during these fires, their family got the pre-order to evacuate. They got to be ready to get the hell out of here order, pack up.
Fixing to get ready to evacuate you. Yeah.
And the person was like started packing up, and the family's like, oh, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, and you know, you just have OCD. And then they got the evacuation order to get out, and it was like, okay, we got to go out. And like, you know, in one hand, she was well prepared. They were like running around like maniacs. And it's like, you know, in this particular case, I think actually it wasn't her OCD.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if it was, I understand, but it actually wasn't her OCD. And she was right. Her parents were like, oh, you know, don't worry, you know. And so I can, you know, probably is as good as I can get for many things. Highly likely, even. Not definite.
Definitely not definite. Definitely Not done, right?
Definitely maybe.
Definitely maybe. Always good a phrase. Definitely maybe. The other thing that I've enjoyed, I've heard people describe OCD and what's going on in the brain. One of my favorite descriptions of it was, if you think about pathways in the brain, there's kind of a roundabout pathway and there's a direct pathway, right? And most things are on the roundabout pathway, like the noise of the space heater behind me, John and my tinnitus, which now just went to the direct pathway because I said it, but it's been on the indirect pathway. The lights that are going on here, I've got all my LEDs. This is my podcast studio also, so I am flooded and blinded by the lights that go on here. All those things. And maybe one of the things that OCD does is it takes something that for everybody else would be on that indirect pathway, but shoots it down the direct pathway for you. And suddenly, because it goes down that pathway, and that pathway is reserved for things that are bad, awful, horrible, dangerous, and need a lot of attention, now this thing has joined all that group of things that need tons of attention. And that's the false alarm of the experience, is this thing slipped through the gate and went down the direct pathway. I just thought that was an interesting description.
Yeah, and I think it gets amplified because it's like, this is crazy that this is bothering me. Oh my God, why is this bothering me? And this shouldn't bother me. It's not allowed. And then I'm in a lot of trouble.
No one else is bothered by this. Why do I have to be bothered by it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do we experience? Oh, go ahead. Did you want to say?
No, you were going to answer friends.
Yep.
Check.
Yeah.
You were going to read it so everybody knew what it was. That's a good thought.
Yeah. I do that for all our visually impaired folks.
I know. It's good. I'll read it this time since I interfered.
Please.
Did you experience many people to be completely cured from OCD, and that nowadays they can easily talk about topics which they were heavily obsessed? We read many people who have recovered from OCD. I don't know what, I mean, the people who are doing really well and love their life sometimes have little slips, but it doesn't take over. But tons of them can talk about their obsessions and topics without fear. So it's they can do it because they've overcome the fear and they're willing to live with the possibility of it. They're not afraid of talking about it. It just becomes like, this was a thing in my life that was, difficult.
I always wonder about the completely cured too, because when I dig into that and ask people, that they often say, well, completely cured will mean I'll never have that thought again. And I say, well, then I don't know how to do that. Because hell, John and I have absorbed pretty much every single thought of anyone we've treated. So John and I might be considered some of the sicker people you've ever met in your life due to the things that run through our head at a
however level. We're okay with the crazy thoughts.
Yes, we don't mind them whatsoever. They don't bother us. Yeah. John knows that if we're at a conference together, we're both going to think about throwing each other down the stairs because we've treated so many people who are afraid of that neither of us could take a stair or an escalator without contemplating the death of everybody on the escalator or the stairs. And we still walk down the stairs together and chat with each other while knowing that thought is in each other's head and that there's a race to the finish to see who's going to push the other one first. And yet we've still never done it.
Yeah. So far, the odds have worked out.
Yeah. But next conference, who knows? You might be flying, John. It is a possibility, right?
Unless they get you first.
Exactly.
Don't turn your back, man.
You are spry for the age you are. I will say that. So I won't turn my back on you by any means whatsoever. Is ERP the best thing to do in certain OCD subsets, or are there other techniques to try? One of the things that I love to say about this is that this is really an important part of treatment. We do ERP for OCD. We don't do ERP for the subtype of OCD that you have, but we want to do ERP for OCD, and that you could apply ERP techniques across the spectrum of whatever kind of subtype you have, because there's no guarantee after you're treated with us for this thing that something else might flare up in the future or might not, right? So you want to be able to take the ERP principles and apply it to whatever might be going on OCD-wise, or you can even expand that out to it's great for anxiety disorders. We use it for phobias. We use it for social anxiety. I use it for agoraphobia. There's versions of it for panic and trauma and all these things that you can learn. So that's how I see it.
the odds are really high that if you present us with the subset you have in mind, that we'll go like, maybe somewhere there's some exception I haven't thought about.
Yeah.
Yeah, this wasn't it.
Uh-huh. There we go. ABF says, can OCD cause you to have a lack of OCD? I don't know that I've ever contemplated that question.
I'm trying to.
Trying to, yeah.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
I guess, yeah.
It's like my OCD it'd be like a vaccination. It's like
Yeah.
I've got my OCD. It's like, oh, it's gone. So no offense. We're not sure
ABF.
what the question means and why it would
Yeah.
be. It sounds like it would be a problem, and we're like, but that sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Caden says, do you know why I might be keep seeking exposures to trigger myself? When I'm triggered, instead of avoiding them, I tend to want to do them more, and I'm not sure if I'm trying to rush the process or what. When I'm triggered,
Well, I feel really safe in saying
go ahead.
that I have a zillion questions I would really need to ask to be able to answer that. I
Yeah.
mean, you could be rushing it. You could be trying to magically get better quickly. You could just be really working hard on exposure. So, and I guess I'd want to know, are you kind of compulsively doing it? Now, if you can't enter, and you know what? Some people, I mean, I have had this in treatment where they don't know if they are doing treatment in a compulsive way as opposed to treatment, in which case we have a method to help them with that. My favorite app, Roundum, which has a little wheel and I've never shown this app up here.
No, I'm excited to learn.
Oh, this is I love this app. The paid version, it's a few dollars. Always get the paid version, because it just has a few things that make it worth it. So here's what Roundum looks like.
Okay.
I can make the circle into 2 parts. I can make it into 20 parts.
Okay.
And so, like, if somebody has a decision problem, let's say you have 10 minutes to make a decision, then Roundum is God.
Gotcha.
And so they push the button. Stop it. They push the button. We wait.
Yeah.
And then Roundum's like the answer, and that is the answer you have to live by. Now, so what I can do is, with the question of like, okay, should they, if somebody's like, am I doing exposure? Is my exposure a ritual?
Yeah.
We'll set up Roundum. Let's say I'll make 3 parts of the circle. I'll have 3 parts. 2 of them will be do the exposure. 1 will be don't do the exposure. And so rather than them deciding, this decides, which means sometimes my exposures, I don't get to do the exposure. Now, we're not saying ritualize. That's never an option.
Right.
But I have found a way to do treatment wrong, just in case treatment is a ritual.
There you go. And I've even done similar with a coin flip or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I'm in it. Mm-hmm. Joyce Cap says, is Remeron used sometimes for OCD? Sometimes, yeah. Or mirtazapine. Also, it works on noradrenaline and serotonin. There have been some studies out on it for OCD. There are newer drugs that are typically used first now, but there are some studies out on Remeron. Carrie says, can you touch on POCD or pedophilic OCD? You're really struggling with that. You feel like exposures are hard with that one because it's hard to accept uncertainty with such an awful topic. Well, let's address the little one issue right over there. The awful topic, right? Is there any topic in OCD that is more awful than any other topic in OCD? And I'm going to go, just hold up a second before you go. I'm just going to say this. Anytime that I've run a group live of OCD and a new person comes in and they hear someone talking about their OCD, no matter what the subtype is, almost every one of them at some point will say, I wish I had that kind of OCD instead of mine.
Oh, I once did something dangerous that I'll never do again.
Okay.
In my work group, it was, if you could have another kind of OCD, what would you pick?
Mm.
So it pissed everyone off because if I picked your OCD because I thought that was better, it's like, okay, this was not a good idea. Because in general, the worst OCD is the one that you were suffering from. I will give Carrie this, that non-sufferers, if you talk about POCD, don't get it.
Right.
So I have to be, it's, I have to be a certain kind of person to be able to
Of course.
comfortably talk about it. But
Yeah.
Alpha, so that's difficult. There are a few things. I mean, yes, we're because there are a few assumptions that people make, and they're not necessarily correct. I would bet that there are a bunch of people out there who have pedophile urges definitely and never give in.
Hmm.
We don't know about them.
Hmm.
And and if somebody's going to say they're a horrible person, I'd say, like, Jen was like, well, do you have if your brother and sister came to you and said, I've got these urges, I never gave in, I never would, but I have these urges, would you tell them that they're a horrible person? The majority of people won't tell their brother or sister that they're horrible if they're doing that the way I described. So, and in fact, it's like they're pretty strong. They're like, living a life that's good, and it's not like they asked for it. So just because I have the urges doesn't necessarily mean I'll give in. Is it preferable not to have them? Sure. But it's kind of almost this assumption, if I have the urges, I'm going to diddle little children, which, the other question I always ask. So when you see an attractive adult whom you think is attractive, you always go up to them and ask if they'll sleep with you. Oh, wait, you can resist those urges? They're still attractive. Um, so it's kind of like, well, how would I live with the worst? That I do it. What if I give in? Oh, that'll be a problem, and that's going to make life much worse. And we would even talk about that. But as we know, trying to figure out. I mean, the thing is, yes, we need to do the exposure, need to take the risk, and it's again, I'm hoping to cope. If I suddenly realize with no doubt, oh yeah, I really want to be with kids, it's like, okay, how am I going to cope with that as opposed to that's all over? There's some people, I kill myself. Nope, sorry, you're condemned to life. Now, how are you going to live with it?
Mm.
Um, it is a struggle and it's scary, but I don't know that, again, POCD. I mean, as Patrick said, all forms are terrible. I don't know if that's, in some ways, is that worse than I'm worried that I'm gonna kill my wife and eat her tonight? It's pretty like down there too. Should
Yeah.
be tasty, I'm sure.
Well done. Um, you say you feel like exposures are hard with this one, and it's hard to accept uncertainty. Here's the thing: people without this kind of OCD already live with this uncertainty. They just don't think about it, right?
Right. If we have the terrible TV show that no longer exists, luckily, Toddlers and Tiaras, you know, it's such a great exposure show. Um, you know, People would look at that show and they'd say, like, this is awful. They're sexualizing children. Now, that statement people don't get what that means. That means the person who doesn't think of themselves as POCD sees this kid and recognizes the sexuality of what's going on. You know, I think they're a pedophile? No, but rather than they're going like, that's terrible, and they don't want to they don't really want to go to the step of saying, like, and recognize the sexuality of it, like, I can see something about it, like, oh, that little girl does have good legs. I mean, I'm not, and then have to go into a long thing if they're not attracted. So as Patrick said, they don't concern themselves with it, where my OCD is going to have a thought. It's like, wait, is that what I want? And then you're off and running. Um, so
Yeah, and it,
I
it
don't think,
gets
yeah,
it gets down to that concept that's so important in OCD to talk about, which is thought action fusion. The idea that a thought is equal to an action. A thought is as bad as an action. Thinking something is as bad as doing something. And, this has been one of the plagues of OCD work, where John and I will work together on getting people to recognize you can have any thought, any image, any urge. It And though OCD says that's as bad as doing it, we say, maybe, maybe not. But there isn't the guarantee there that OCD throws at you that it is that very thing. Carolina says, you have sensory motor and meta OCD mixed. What are some ways ERP could be used on these two? I'm finding it very difficult. Well, in terms of sensory motor, I mean, which usually I see in the form of like, what if I didn't blink well enough, and then after a while you're trying to control your blinking, right? Or what if I did,
or I don't want to notice my blinking.
Yeah, or there you go, or notice my breathing or something like that. I'll tell people I want you to spend the entire day blinking weird, right? And guess what happens? Just like what John talked about earlier with the tape that's going on, after a while, guess what you do? You forget about blinking.
Yeah. Right? Or again, I will have them engage in normal activities.
Yeah.
With the tape, reminding them of what they're
Yep.
trying to, with the idea that my goal is to live with it, not get rid of it.
Yep.
And there are a couple of meta OCD. I don't know if she means she's having obsessions about obsessions. So I'm not exactly, I can take that a couple of ways.
Yeah.
It depends what the fear is. Is it a fear of how I'm thinking about my thinking? Am I obsessing about obsessing? I don't want to obsess. So, but at least at some core level, the treatment would be really similar, unless there's a different core fear. Excuse me. So
you weren't driving. You would have gone right off the road there, John. So yeah.
Yes. Are we sure that I'm not driving?
Maybe you are. I don't know. It is possible. Ashton likes the content we've done, says it's helped him educate his clients as they start their journeys on OCD. That's awesome. Yeah. Elizabeth says, how do you feel chronic pain plays into OCD? There's a couple of things. It's an interesting question, right? Number one, people could develop some chronic pain from OCD if they're doing repetitive behaviors over and over again as part of checking or sensory motor stuff, or maybe in terms of grabbing onto things to make sure they're tightened enough. They may get pain in their hands or carpal tunnel or something. They could do all sorts of things that could be maybe leading to some pain, right? There's other folks who might see chronic pain as being punished for a thought or an image or urge they have, right? Maybe even a scrupulous kind of nature, that I must have done something terrible and this is a punishment from a higher power, because why else would I have this pain other than I must have been an awful, terrible person? So I don't know about you, John, but I would really want to know, like, what are the beliefs that someone holds about the chronic pain, first of all, or what are the things that maybe led to the chronic pain, so that I could truly understand what the relationship is with OCD.
And the third one would be that there is a real chronic pain.
Yes.
And, for which there is actually not a treatment. Mm-hmm. And so, learning to cope with the chronic pain is like, how do I have a second best life? Mm-hmm. I could have bad arthritis. I mean, there are a lot of things that are real, and learning to live with it. And if you want to say that's less than ideal, the answer is like, well, yeah, you're right. But if I don't have a choice, because I can take that chronic pain, if I'm going to obsess about it and demand that it be gone, I will actually make that pain worse and make my life worse. So what we're selling is not easy, and it can take a lot of work. And a lot of early chronic pain work actually was focused on, let's live the fullest life we can, as long as we're not doing things injurious. If you're chronic pain, like, if I do this, I'm gonna actually get injured. Okay, yeah, we're not doing that. But if I can do this safely, and even if it hurts, then we're going to maybe do that, because we want to have as much life as we can. And there are ways I can, in a mindful way, learn to have pain and, be okay. So obviously level of pain is different. Of course, everybody's level of pain tolerance, I can't be in somebody's body, know how bad it is. But, to what extent to what extent is the idea this has to stop versus it's excruciating pain?
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to live with it. That's true, but that doesn't mean anybody can fix it.
Yeah. Any advice around explaining to family and healthcare providers about irrational fears / obsessions, surprised by the people that lack major understanding of this condition?
So are we.
Mm-hmm.
Treatment for this has been around since 1985. And American Psychological Association, American Psychiatric Association, International OCD Foundation all agree on treatment. And yet it is hard to find people who properly treat it. And it's actually easier to treat OCD than it is to change the mind of mental health professionals. So it's a real problem. And I think Patrick and I could probably go into a 20-minute thing that we say when we're trying to educate families or other professionals, because there are things we could do that kind of get through to them and say to them, and unfortunately, your surprise reflects truth. On the average in the US, it takes somebody around 14 to 17 years to find good treatment if they're lucky. It's a terrible state of affairs, and I have no idea why a treatment that's been around this long that works, that it's so hard to get mental health professionals to accept research rather than think they know better. It's as if there are a bunch of people out there who don't really care about facts, and they just decide what they believe is truth.
Or they only do what they were taught in graduate school and don't take the time to try to learn about updates, even though they
Same
graduated
thing.
35 years ago, right? Yeah, exactly. That very question is the reason NOCD exists. Our CEO, Stephen Smith, was bounced around between several therapists. He saw 5 different therapists before finally finding somebody who knew how to treat OCD with exposure and response prevention therapy. And those therapists prior to that one were telling him to do things like snap a rubber band on your wrist every time you have a thought you don't like, or, oh, you have thoughts about your family. Well, you should move away from your family, and then you won't have those intrusive thoughts anymore about them. These are the kinds of things he was told to do, because many therapists have a notion that, number one, you can stop a thought, which is stupid, and B, that you can actually run away from your brain in some way. So, moving somewhere will get you away from. But as John and I will tell you, wherever you go, your brain goes with you, and therefore the thoughts and the images and urges go with you too, right? And so Stephen realized once he got the right treatment, it wasn't a treatment problem, it was an accessibility problem.
Yeah.
And that's why I do this webinar for years, and I brought John in to join me. We were chatting one day, and I said, join. And afterwards, he said, that was fun. We should do it again. And I said, are you really? He said, well, if you're serious, I'm serious. And then we said, we're getting married, and we're doing the webinar. And now we've been doing it, and we love doing it because we love bringing an opportunity to educate people about OCD out there to the world, right? And we're going to keep doing that and making sure that every week we can offer some more education to the world so they truly do understand OCD. It's why we do the Get to Know OCD podcast. It's why John started goals groups for people, so that accessibility to care would be out there more and more. Oh, come see us this summer in Chicago at the International OCD Foundation Conference, by the way.
Yes, that should be fun.
Yeah.
I was thinking, and I'm sorry, Stephanie, she asked, how does she break trichotillomania? And if in 2 minutes, Patrick and I can tell you how to do this, we are so good. There are a bunch of things to do, but it's a lot of work, and there are a bunch of questions of what to do. It's as it's how do I make it more conscious, and where and when are you pulling? What do you do with the hair? Do you understand why pulling hair is fun? Because it is fun, and so there's a whole bunch of stuff, and it's not like a simple enough answer that we can give you. Do you have some better advice than that, Patrick? I'll bet you do.
Well, yeah. So and you're absolutely right about getting people to recognize, right? I wish we could just say to people, hey, stop pulling your hair. And they'd go, oh, shit, I never thought about that. Thanks. Okay, I'll stop pulling my hair. One of the biggest things is the awareness training, right? So putting on a glove on the hand that you normally pull your hair with is something you could do, right? And that way, if let's say you pull your hair at night when you're just watching television, but you don't even notice that you're doing it, but 3 hours later you look down and there's a pile of hair in your lap and you didn't even realize. People could go to that level of subconscious of doing something like this. Well, if you put a glove on that hand, right, and even if you want to Velcro it on there so you can't, without knowing it, take it off. When you go to touch your hair, it's going to feel different. It's going to be a shock to your system in a way, like, wait, what is? Oh my gosh! And starting that awareness is one of the key things that we do, right? And then we can get you to do opposite behaviors, right? John and I know Doug Woods, who does amazing work in habit reversal training with tics, right? And how do you teach people to monitor the urge to do certain things before they actually happen? And we used to believe things like tics or even skin picking or trick might not even be controllable. Like, there were beliefs early on that there's nothing we can do about this, but there is, and there's been great research done. So I would definitely reach out. You can find a great therapist. We train our therapists at NOCD how to treat this. So if it's something that you're looking for, there are people available for that.
Absolutely. And if there are two that I thought I could answer very quickly.
Go ahead. Which ones?
So there was Danny Krebs, who said, if we're supposed to disregard our theme, how can we do exposures around it? And so actually, we would never say to disregard the theme. So
Yeah.
so that's not really a problem. And the other one is from Beth Carducci, who is concerned about, did I fix my clock or not? And she bet against me. And the trouble with this clock is it's incredibly heavy.
Yeah.
It's really poorly made. So picking the clock, the batteries behind it and getting behind it to put the battery in is just an ordeal. And when the battery's in, it doesn't get fixed for daylight savings time because, again, it's an ordeal. So the shock will be, the low probability event will be seeing it on time working. So Beth, I think you played the odds well. You were correct to bet against me.
Yeah. I also have a clock upstairs in my upstairs office that is totally wrong on time, and it really annoys a lot of people. And I just purposely leave it that way because I enjoy the fact that it is a built-in exposure to a lot of folks to have to deal with the doubt and the uncertainty about the time and where it's at. So I really like that. Beth wants to know what she wins. I went down to the bottom to see if she wins. Yeah.
My admiration.
There you go. Yeah.
It's priceless. Well, you try to cash it in, that's what you're getting.
Yep. And Kotzen asks, is scratching head and skin also a part of OCD? So there are OCD-related conditions. In the OCD conditions in the DSM, you've got OCD, you've got trichotillomania, you've got excoriation, you've got body dysmorphic disorder, you've got hoarding. Those are all the related conditions to OCD in the DSM.
The thing about those conditions is, OCD tends to be avoidant. That is, people are always trying to get rid of something, not do something. Those conditions tend to be appetitive. They're more like an addiction. That is, usually you may not like the results of it, but the actual doing it feels like I'm doing something I need to do. Yeah, I mean, it could just be itchy, but it's like, if I'm scratching and picking, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to get rid of that little scab around the area. It's really making it worse. But that, and hair pulling, like pimple popping, for most people, there's some exceptions, there is a good pull. That really pull where it's just a nice fat root and it's really good. And
you squish it between your nail and your finger.
Right. And you don't know it's there until you touch it. And the trouble is that, if I feel like there's one and I pull, and it's like, if it's not a good one, it's like, well, I need to pull again. I'm now on search and destroy. And even if I have a good one, I just want to find one more. And of course, the problem is that the pulling also creates more hairs that feel like they need to be pulled. So there
Right.
is an addictive part to it.
Yes.
Um, so that makes it a little more repetitive, as opposed to OCD. Nobody feels like washing their hands for 20 minutes.
Right.
With hair pulling, I don't want the damage, but
There is that endorphin rush even from that slight pain that it could cause too.
yeah,
A little
yeah,
release. Yeah.
exactly.
George Carlin does a hysterical, I don't know if you've seen it, John, bit about when you're just kind of touching your head, you run, and suddenly you find a scab, and you're like, oh, I'm going to save that one for later, and you're all excited about now you can go home, and you put on your scab picking clothes, and you sit in your scab chair. And you pull it off, and it goes off in one piece, and you take a picture, you send it to Scabs RS magazine, and it just goes on and on about
Right.
it and everything. Yeah. Well, everyone, you've wasted another wonderfully great hour of your life with these two idiots. we
And we
thank you for
appreciate
joining
it.
us, and boy, do we appreciate it. Yes, and we thank all of you for joining us. John, give everyone a little rundown of you and your work one more time.
I always feel there's not much to say. Private practice. I
You
work
got a
with
book out,
OCD.
you could say
Oh, yeah, I do have a book, Freedom from OCD. It should sound like me because I wrote it. So pretty much everything I say is in there. It's always a little scary if someone reads it before they come see me because they know my entire repertoire except for about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But sometimes that works out.
That's awesome. And if you're looking for help for OCD-related conditions, check us out at NOCD.com. That's NOCD.com. We do work with hoarding. We do work with skin picking, hair pulling, tics, OCD, and all the kind of associated things. And one of my favorite things we also do are what we call our NOCD 411, which is if you're not quite ready for primetime therapy, but you want to talk to an expert in the field, we'll give you an hour with one of us just to be able to ask questions and talk about things that are going on. Especially great for like stuff that our friend Alec Pollard does too, for family members who might not be ready to do treatment, but you don't know how to help them or what to do. We can help you with that and give you some advice too. So thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again in a month with John.